Welcome back, writers. Okay, today we're diving into a seriously chilling explainer for our creative writing class. I want you to literally imagine hearing the dying, rattling voice of the creed of the cosmic mind, just echoing through a completely broken universe. What happens when an antagonist, a villain of pure logic, is unmasked and totally transformed into a willing protagonist of chaos? Well, that is exactly the journey we are dissecting today. We're looking at an absolute masterclass in grimdark narrative by tracking the fall and the dark rebirth of a character known as Cynos the Pale Cynic. I am the fading law of a dead empire, the disappearing ink of the creed of the cosmic mind. Wow. Just feel the weight of those words for a second. This sets that perfect grimdark fable tone for our explainer. We're going to deconstruct the literary arc of Cynos, who goes from being the architect of order to ultimately the witness. But we aren't just looking at what happens to him. We're looking at how this story is told, specifically through the perspective of his own vanishing logic. We're going to examine how to construct and then brilliantly demolish a character's entire worldview. So here is our syllabus for today's thematic literary deconstruction. We'll hit false order, move to laughter's blade, examine shifting settings, look at shattered mirrors, reveal the disappearing ink, and finally witness the grave dance. We are basically charting the exact chapters of a cosmic collapse.
All right, Section 1, False Order, Constructing the Tomb.
Every great character arc has to start with a foundational belief, right? Like a thesis? Well, for Cynos, who is a creature of pure, cold intellect, he looks at the universe and just sees a meaningless error. To him, the natural motion of existence is nothing but this tasteless broth of chaos. So, what does he do? He becomes the architect of the void. He tries to impose static control by locking all that chaos away in a tomb of his own making. And notice the specific, really heavy literary props the author uses here. Cynos forges a pact with the creed of the mind, representing the id, and the truth-telling monster, representing the superego. He literally builds a grim mental fortress out of gilded cages and Apollonian gaskets. These aren't just cool fantasy words. They are profound symbols of restriction. He authors an immutable master architecture just to enforce a frozen perfection. As writers, we can see how these choices create this heavy, frozen silence. It's essentially a sensory deprivation chamber designed to trap that kinetic, tasteless broth of motion.
Moving right along to Section 2, Laughter's Blade, Enter the Wit. Now you know a thesis can't just stand alone in a story. It's gotta meet its antithesis. And that brings us to the inciting incident of the arc. The wit shows up. This right here brilliantly illustrates the power of literary juxtaposition. On one side, we have the architect's rigid logic, his pure, cold intellect, and his quest for an unearned majesty. On the other side, the wit, wielding the unbinding power of the absurd. Instead of fighting logic with more logic, the wit fights it with a jagged blade of laughter. It's a really visceral metaphor. The wit's laughter literally starts peeling away Cynos' logical cages like dead skin. It completely contrasts the sterile mathematical world of the architect with the raw, absurd reality of actual existence.
Which brings us to Section 3, Shifting Settings, from Fortress to Playhouse.
Okay, pay close attention to how the narrative actively dismantles the environment here. A huge part of creative writing is making sure your setting reflects your character's internal state. So as Cynos' mind starts to crack, the world around him doesn't just sit there, it reacts. We track this physical unspooling, starting with that grim mental fortress, which was always just an illusion of static control. Then, as the wit's laughter cuts through, those Apollonian gaskets are peeled away in this slow, colorful death for the architect's logic. Ultimately, the tomb-like fortress is entirely transformed into a surreal playhouse. That heavy silence, gone, replaced by the humming, kinetic energy of the chaotic broth. This shift from a rigid tomb to a chaotic playhouse perfectly mirrors what the text calls the logic of the crucible taking hold of Cynos' mind.
Next up is Section 4, Shattered Mirrors, a reflection of chaos. Inside this surreal playhouse, we hit this moment of profound symbolic deconstruction. We pull this crucial prop right out of the debris of those broken Apollonian gaskets, a shattered mirror. The meaning behind this mirror in the final scene is deeply philosophical. When Cynos picks up this jagged glass, he doesn't see his own face staring back at him. No way. He sees the infinite, meaningless motion of the universe swirling in that tasteless broth. He's literally looking through the cracks at the stars themselves. This represents the spirit of becoming. He realizes the total absurdity of his own attempts at control.
This mirror is the exact moment his transition solidifies. He shifts from being the architect of order, the guy trying to dictate what the universe should be, to the witness who simply observes what the universe actually is.
And check out his reaction. Honestly, this is brilliant character work. You'd expect the despair of a fallen titan weeping over his broken empire, right? Actually, scratch that. Instead of weeping, Sinos turns to the wit and just grins. He says, "I must thank you. You have peeled away the dead skin of my deception, allowing the blood-slicked chaos to finally breathe." And his voice is vibrating with the raw hunger of the void. This marks his complete philosophical realization. He isn't defeated at all. He's liberated. This perfectly sets up Section 5, Disappearing Ink, the Secret Alignment. So here's the grand twist of our grimdark fable. Sinos's obsessive quest for order, it wasn't an honest failure. The text reveals it was actually a performative stage play for the void. Notice how the author uses these incredibly visceral details to reveal his secret alignment with chaos this whole time. We find out he was secretly wedded to the all-consuming maw, the veil of Maya. And watch the physical transformation. His crimson mask doesn't just fall off. It acts as a ritualistic bridge, physically integrating into his skin. The red pigment flows downward, and vibrant red runes ignite across his black, mocking priestly robes. These visual cues are telling us that the chaos wasn't infecting him from the outside, it was bursting forth from the inside. His rigid laws were just a deception hiding his true nature. And so, his ultimate masterpiece, the Creed of the Cosmic Mind, just fades away. Turns out, it was written in disappearing ink. I mean, what a beautiful metaphor for the impermanence of constructed logic, right? You can build all the mental fortresses you want, but eventually the ink fades, leaving the cosmic page utterly blank. But here's the thing. That blank page isn't empty. It reveals the negative space of the void underneath. It strips away the illusion of meaning to reveal the raw canvas of reality. And that leads us into Section 6. The Grave Dance, the meaningless miracle. We've finally reached the narrative synthesis. The false order is gone, the laughter did its job, the setting is a playhouse, and the ink has totally vanished. Sinos now fully embraces his new identity as the last thinker and the submissive witness. The crucial point here is this final haunting image. Sinos begins a perpetual grave dance, swaying in the dark, fertile ground as the all-consuming maw prepares for its feast. Let's talk about the deeper philosophical implications here. A grave dance definitely sounds morbid, but remember, the ground is described as fertile. This physical action represents his ultimate surrender to the ruin he secretly desired from his very first stroke of the pen. By swaying to the kinetic energy of the universe, he is accepting that creation and destruction are the exact same thing. He's no longer fighting the chaotic broth, he's dancing in it. He has become a witness to the feast, entirely at peace with his own consumption. And that brings us to the final revelation left in the blank space of the void. The cynical test. The universe, totally stripped of its gilded cages and arbitrary rules, poses one final provocative question to Sinos, to the wit, and honestly to us as readers and writers. Can you survive the beauty of a miracle that has no meaning? When you strip away all those comforting illusions of order, can you find awe in the raw, chaotic fact that anything exists at all? Think about how you can apply this level of thematic depth to your own writing. Until next time, keep exploring the void.